Daniel Ricciardo has been linked to a sensational return to the sport from 2026 onwards, and it's all thanks to the fact that we'll have 11 teams on the grid with the new regulations. The popularity of the Aussie in the USA, which is where Cadillac is based, as well as his race winning, make the perfect match between these two. But with Danny's recent struggles and downfalls in form, can he rejuvenate his career with Cadillac? And if not, will this be yet another dark spot in his career? It's safe to say that one of the most painful yet expected departures from the sport happened in 2024 when Ricciardo was replaced by Lawson after his last race in Singapore. It came as a bit of a shock that Red Bull didn't announce anything at that time. Neither did Racing Bulls, the team to which they landed Ricciardo's services. But the shareholders made their wishes known. We want the young team to be consisted of young drivers and not veterans. And that is precisely what they got. So all in all, it wasn't good news for Ricciardo, no matter which way you look at it. But now that he's enjoying retirement, Ricciardo knows that in this fast-paced world, anything can change in an instant, and a situation has arisen in which he might be in a competition to return to Formula One sooner rather than later, and that would be 2026. The entrance of Cadillac is changing everything on the horizon, and even though their intention is to sign at least one American driver, with the leading candidate being Colton Herta, the other one would be an experienced competitor with race-winning experience. That's where Ricciardo fits the best. And not only that, but his numbers and popularity in the USA are extraordinary. This is why Red Bull wanted to keep him active as an ambassador of the team, and whether we like it or not, Danny is bringing in the big bucks from the States in a similar fashion as to how Perez is doing from Latin America. Be that as it may, Cadillac is now seriously considering the option to return Ricciardo from retirement and give him a fresh bloodline. And there is one thing that both sides need to understand: the field will be highly competitive in 2026, and there is no room for a mistake. Even though Ricciardo's last race win was back in 2021 with McLaren, we are talking about a driver who has 257 GP starts and 8 race victories, all coming in a time where different teams were dominating the grid, mainly Mercedes. Even with this in mind, the man was able to deliver top-notch performances to the Austrian team before Verstappen showed up and changed the course of his career. But as of now, a lifeline might have been found with Cadillac. Even though ESPN reported that sources close to Ricciardo told them he's not interested in returning to Formula One and making the move to Cadillac, they've also reported that Ricciardo hasn't been approached by the American team in the first place, which is quite strange because Mario Andretti has spoken very highly of the 8-time race winner and his ability to bring a lot of value to a team. When a team enters the grid, especially one like Cadillac and General Motors, who have zero to no experience in this field whatsoever, they ought to be labelled as backmarkers and nothing more than 2 cars that would have to get out of the way of the top drivers and finish qualifications in Q1. Ricciardo would be here to prove the opposite, thanks to his experience and profound feedback on the car, something that he was praised largely for by his former teammate Yuki Tsunoda. The Japanese driver said that if there is anything he's learned from Ricciardo, it's how to learn the car's flaws and stay calm when the session is not going in the desired way for him. So all of this points towards the fact that not only can Ricciardo help Cadillac build the perfect car, but he can also be a wind in the sails for Colton Herta, who will have a lot of pressure on his back. Even though Ricciardo's hat indicates that he is retired and is enjoying that life right now, the Aussie didn't really put a pin in his plans after the VCARB stunt, but it's worth noting that it's the second one that he can consider failed because his mission didn't get completed successfully after the awful McLaren stint in which he got humiliated by Norris performance. All of this has a massive influence on the driver's performance and can take a lot of a toll on his self-confidence, but a team like Cadillac will certainly give him a lot to work with, and with the volatile nature of Formula One, it would be silly not to suggest that Ricciardo won't be a valued piece on the market, especially for a newcomer team like Cadillac. If we are to look at the pattern that Audi has created and followed, it does look like the American-based squad ought to do the same. Sign one rookie driver for their long-term plans and sign a veteran who would help them in putting the team in the right direction, which is likely going to take at least 3 years, similar to how long it took Mercedes back in 2010 when they rejoined the sport. Of course, Cadillac will have their own engine program from 2028 onwards that should help them with pushing through the grid and maybe even fighting for a championship. One of the biggest challenges that Ricciardo would have to tackle down is the competitiveness of Cadillac, and the fact that they will be a customer team in their first couple of sessions doesn't really bode well with Ricciardo's wishes to compete at the front. Even though he hasn't proven it with the previous 2 teams, the Aussie's wish is to fight for higher points and for podium finishes, and it's very interesting to note that Cadillac is highly unlikely to give that to him, which could be a reason why he will be considering this move to a greater extent. It's not only Ricciardo who is being considered as a legitimate candidate for this seat, however. Even though many have doubted the abilities of Zhou to deliver top-notch results, rightfully so, after his miserable stint with Sauber, we must also remind you of one fact. He is one of the few rookies to score points in his first race ever. On top of that, Sauber didn't really give him and Bottas the car to fight with, even though the deficit to his teammate was quite visible and was the biggest one on the grid in terms of qualifying and race pace. Be that as it may, Zhou still finished the season with more points than Bottas, 4, all gained with his P8 finish in Qatar, and whether we like it or not, the man is bringing in the big bucks from the Chinese sponsors who are standing behind him. At the end of the day, everything revolves around the money factor here, and Zhou is definitely proving that he is one of the most important pillars to a stable economic situation for a team, regardless of whether or not he is a full-time or reserve driver for them, a role that Ferrari would have wanted to secure for 2025. And there is a situation that needs to be mentioned here that adds a lot of value to Zhou being linked to Cadillac. The man who is set to become the team principal of the American squad, Graham Loden, is also part of the management team of Zhou. It would be a massive boost to return the Chinese driver to the grid, because he will definitely be promised a hefty sum of money if he pulls it off. And believe me when I say this, he will have one hell of a job to convince General Motors that there is another version of Zhou that we don't know about, and one with which they might be in the point scoring positions more frequently than not, given the fact that the team is more or less locked in for Colton Herta. What doesn't bode well for Herta, the man who is supposed to be certain for the seat, is the fact that he is yet to obtain his super license before being eligible to race in Formula 1. So as of now, the Chinese driver has a little bit of an edge, at least for the first year of Andretti. With the connections that he has with Graham Loden, everything seems to be set in stone. But again, in this volatile world of Formula 1, nothing is certain, and until the papers are signed and the dot is put on the I, nothing can be guaranteed. With all this in mind, do you think that a pairing of Ricciardo and Zhou is possible for Cadillac entering into their first year in the sport in 2026? And if so, do you think that the team would profit a lot from them, considering the fact that they had questionable spells with their previous teams? Let us know in the comments below, and if you're interested in the latest regulation changes in Formula 1 for 2025 and 2026, have a look at the video that's appearing on your screen right now.